Hello, and welcome to Building for Scale, How to Create a Self-Service Organization. I'm Drew Franklin, IT Audit Manager at J.M. Huber. An introduction to me, I started in IT operations at General Electric, and I was focused on building management systems and their projects under the commercial finance group. From there, I ran an operations team at a small web development here in Atlanta, where I helped to grow a 7-person seedling into a thriving business of over 100 employees. From there, I moved to a medium-sized payment processing software company, where I was over the security and plans and operations teams. Because of that company's proximity to the banking industry, I led our team in a number of audits and third-party attestations, such as PCI DSS and a SSA 16 SOC 2 Type 2 with all 5 trust principles. I enjoyed that aspect of my job so much that I eventually decided to pursue a career in internal audit, and I joined J.M. Huber in 2015 and haven't looked back. From there, I progressed from a staff to an IT audit manager. J.M. Huber is a 135-year-old family-owned private portfolio management company. It consists of 3 distinct business units: CP Kelco, Huber Engineered Materials, and Huber Engineered Woods, plus a corporate entity. We have a global scale of operations. We're in over 10 countries and on 5 continents. We manufacture a diverse range of products, from pectin and biogums, which are common food additives, fire retardants for industrial applications, and Advantech flooring and sheeting used in housing. We employ over 4,300 people, of which 8 are internal auditors and 2 are assigned to IT auditing, including myself. Our IT audit team is a talent pool. I should say our audit team in general is a talent pool that gets fished often. Audit is used to place high potential candidates into the business units and also rotate existing team members within Huber to gain experience across the organization. This high turnover means a high potential for rapid degradation of processes, systems, and capabilities without appropriate countermeasures by management. Our 3 T's were developed by our Vice President of Internal Audit to lay a strategic foundation for the department that will guide us for the next 5 years. Teamwork means that we closely align with our business needs. We deliver the business value and quality within our budget. Talent means we provide opportunities to develop business acumen and risk management skills. And technology means that we're gaining improvements in efficiency, quality, and coverage, whether it's continuously monitoring risk to timely detect and investigate risk profile changes, or providing data-driven insights in impactful forms that are useful to the business management. We'll talk mostly about technology today, and specifically how our legacy audit management system was not built for that environment. It was rigid, inaccessible outside of our corporate network, and very difficult to train and maintain proficiency. We knew we had an issue, and so we evaluated a number of audit management systems over a 6-month period, and we felt that of the ones that could meet our needs, OnSpring was the best suited for us. And so we implemented OnSpring and have been working within that system to meet the tenets that are put forth in our 3 T's. So it has enabled us to work closely or more close with our business. It has helped our team members who are developing their business acumen to use a system that is modern and easy to use and maintain proficiency on. And then of course, we're harnessing technology for the betterment of the department and of our audited business entities. So I'm going to walk through some steps And these steps are really what we found to be the core functions that I went through in scaling. And step one is to track and report across our business units. Step two is decentralizing our project management. Step three is improving the employee experience. Step four, promoting continuity and effectiveness. And step five is agility for our specialized programs. So step one, tracking and reporting across these business units. To provide some context, each one of our business units has a follow-up coordinator that we will interface with. These follow-up coordinators are typically in accounting or controlling positions and are not native into either IT or are not auditors themselves. So having a system that provides us with a common experience, but also one that is highly accessible to non-audit personnel is very important. Because of some of the technical limitations that I previously mentioned in our legacy AMS, we were managing our follow-up activities and audit project progress with spreadsheets, ad hoc reports, some emotional phone calls, and the audacity of hope. Remediations habitually slipped through cracks, and no one was happy with the state of affairs. To solve that problem in our new AMS, we needed to have some core functionality that would support a more modern and usable experience. So customized dashboards that were designed for each business unit, but could be similar across the business units, was a primary concern. So we would get away from canned reporting that we had to generate that was not real time. And we got into a live look dashboard that our business unit personnel could reference at any point and pull their own reports for their own internal usage without having to contact audit and have us trace down the spreadsheet du jour. So these customized dashboards, they were similar but different because not only did they provide a common experience for our users, but also reduce the training load for internal audit. So as we experience turnover, the business experiences turnover as well. And so being able to train the replacement contacts quickly or use standardized training materials helped us ensure that degradation of proficiency and understanding that I mentioned in a previous slide wasn't happening. This was not possible in our legacy AMS, and certainly not possible when you have 15 different spreadsheets floating around. Leveraging more granular security was also big on our list. We wanted to be able to filter the content easily to keep the information segregated in each of the business units. That's important for a number of reasons. We want the business units to have relevant information that they need to see. We also wanted to ensure that there was trust in internal audit. So if one business unit has audit findings, they're not being broadcast to the other business units. This also comes into play when we talk about some of our specialized programs, when we're dealing with sensitive information. So the granular security and filtering enabled us to give our audit contacts the information that they needed to do their jobs quickly and easily. And in the example that I have here, we have a slightly redacted version of the business unit dashboards. Here you can see it's very simple. They have status and they have severity. And there's not a lot for either one. We have issue levels of severity 1 through 3 in verbals. And then we have mitigation status: in progress, mitigated, validated, and overdue. The mitigation status is color coded. Obviously overdue is to be avoided and is in red to signify that. Validated means that it's been through both sets of hands, both the contacts and submitted to us, and audit has gone through and said it was acceptable remediation evidence. So that's in green, and then mitigated, of course, in yellow. So this dashboard is used in conjunction with email notifications to prompt our users for actions that have deadlines that are set forth in our policy. So we are able to get results without having to do constant follow-up with the managers, and also so the managers don't have to live within the system. They have their day jobs, and so if they are working outside of OnSpring on whatever it is they're assigned to, and they get an email, there's a path to go into the system and deal with what they're being alerted on. So in these dashboards and in our email notifications, we were careful to reduce the number and types of statuses, highlight dates and actions, and remove the general clutter. We wanted the content to be filtered and laser focused, and that's what we achieved. The result of that is that our the remediation rate has kept up with the business's the goals of the business to have 0 overdue remediations, and our feedback has been overwhelmingly positive. That our contacts are able to go in and use a system. It's very simple, and even during change out between employees, the proficiency in the system has remained because of the simplicity and the repeatable training information, or training materials, I should say. Step 2 is our decentralized project management. Our audit team, at least prior to the current pandemic, was spread all over the world on field work. We're all based out of the Atlanta office, but our projects will take us to various ends of the earth, and this presents challenges. So one of our key concerns was being able to access OnSpring no matter where we are at, and especially if we are off of the internal network. Our other AMS, we weren't able to do that without some complex citrus logging in, and that could be a little touch and go in some places that did not have the best bandwidth. So using Okta and the SSO capabilities through that, which sit outside of our firewall, we can get into OnSpring as long as we have an internet connection. And we have no need to be connected to our internal network at that point. So that means that work that was previously being done offline and maintained in work papers on desktops is moved into the system. And that's important to us for a number of reasons. But this high availability of the audit management system works in tandem with our goals of having a decentralized approach to our system. So we have milestone reporting and triggers and outcomes, and we number our project steps, a very simple kind of linear project steps, so that we don't have too much complexity, and that helps us at a glance determine what status a project is in. So in the example that I've put up here, this is for our Kelco Grossenbroda plant. This is a industrial control system audit. We have our planning, field work, drafting, and report issuing phases there on the left-hand side. And this interface, while simple, is meant to help us work left to right, top to bottom, as we progress through the audit. And so each outcome, so if we've started the project, we're default in planning. Once planning is complete, we enter the date there to the right of it, and that puts us in field work, which is open. And that progresses all the way through when we do the follow-up. This is very helpful because our project statuses themselves are very linear. So this also ties into our time cards, which I'll talk about a little bit later. They're linked to the status. So if I book hours during the date range when planning is open, it automatically tells me that I was doing planning activities. This is very important in avoiding redundant entry and maximizing the automation that we can get within the system. We want to reduce the amount of required fields when we start up a project as well. Sometimes we get put on special assignments or investigations. And with the reduced required fields and an avoidance of very tight workflows or very complicated workflows, we can stub out ad hoc projects as they come up. So if we are given a project, we can immediately fire it up, make it so that we can start booking hours to it and checking in documents against it, generating work papers to it, without requiring every field to be filled out. And also without the lack of these fields impacting some of our reporting. The overriding concern here is to keep it simple. The simplicity helps both in the understanding from the business unit of where we're at, to our executive dashboard so he can get a glance of what his team is doing, but also with our staff and junior members to understand this process in as simple terms as possible. And here we have an example of the time card system that we've used as part of our decentralized project management. So no one likes time cards. Even the best time card systems still seem to be a burden. And I wanted to know how we could limit the spread. Especially with my IT background, it seems that IT has a penchant for just really burdensome, annoying time card systems. And I didn't want to visit that brand of inconvenience on my team. And also we wanted a time card system that was part of our project management system so that we didn't have to access multiple systems to do our day-to-day activities. Well, lucky for us, we were able to use functionality within to achieve this goal. So our time cards are designed to capture the project and the hours and the activity that I mentioned on the previous screen. So if the project, in this case, was gross and brota, and the activity, which in my example I used planning, those are filled in, then we put in the hours. Any comments can be added as well. And that's it. The system will be able to determine that your time came in during those planning activities. And so if we want to report on perhaps how much time we're using in planning or how much billable time we're using during field work, we can do that quite easily. This is, in this example, this is about as good as we can get with our internal audit tracking of time, because being an internal department, we're not doing external billing that requires a high degree of precision. For us, we're rounding to the nearest half hour and really just using it to help refine our project understanding so that we can better estimate the duration of our engagements and types of engagements. So the time cards are also auto-generated at midnight on Friday. So when we come into work Friday morning, time cards are waiting for us. And that's all in the spirit of limiting these manual interactions with the system. If I have to go in and generate my own time card, that's just one more step that I might, huff or roll my eyes at, as part of my day in, day out responsibilities. And so I'm happy that we have automated as much as we can and continue to look for ways to automate as much as we can so that our team is doing the jobs that they want to do and not entering information about the jobs they're doing. Step 3 is improving the employee experience. So on top of our time cards, we really wanted a core business system that's easy to train and learn and use. And so we have to get that new user adoption with simplification and automation of these internal procedures and functions. So in this example, I've pulled up our Woolion plant industrial control system audit. If you can't tell, I do a lot of these. So in this example, I'm showing what our work papers may look like. And here you can see that I've got the documentation ICS 1.0 through ICS 6.0. And these are our control areas: physical security, logical access, so on and so forth. These are all part of a library, which is called the ICS General Controls Audit. And so when we create the project in the system, I selected this is going to be an ICS General Controls Audit. And it gives me this list of controls, 1 through 6, that I can add to the project. I can also trim them as I see fit. So sometimes we need to descope some things because of ongoing projects at the plant level. So for instance, if we had a control that was being descoped, such as physical security, because of they were putting in a new fence and most of the controls have to do with perimeter security, and so we're not testing that, then I can remove that physical security piece. And that doesn't remove it from the program library. That just removes it from this particular audit. So once I select those things, I add them into the project, they create the work papers. And within there, it'll tell me everything I need. And we'll take a look at that a little bit later of the information that each one of those work papers comes complete with. Work papers are pre-populated with as much administrative information as possible based on the business unit and location. So for this one, it's our Kelco business unit, and it's in Wuhan, which is in China. So information such as what sub-business unit, it knows that this is part of our biogums team. And it also knows that the names of the audit coordinators in the business unit who will be receiving the notifications for the findings. All this metadata about the project gets pushed into the work papers so that I'm not having to manually re-enter this on multiple screens. That's great for me as a manager familiar with internal audit, but it's even better for our staff auditors and maybe our managers that are new to the company. And that really addresses like the 2 pain points that we try and get to when we have this simplification and auto population. So we have folks that come in and they're new to the company. So they might be familiar with audit and, at another organization, but they're not really familiar with the broad and complex companies such as Huber. Knowing intuitively that our location in Grossenbrod is part of CP Kelco and not part of HEM is something that I've been able to glean over my experience within JM Huber. But for a new hire, this could lead to maybe some bad data in the system that they'd have to go back and rework as part of the work paper review process. Well, in my mind, that's wasted energy. And so if we can help them with filling in the correct information the first time through, then we're help saving those calories. So the other use case is that we have people that come in from the business and they're new to audit. So they know JM Huber, but they don't know, they're not professional auditors. They're not classically trained auditors. That's our job, is to train them. So these preformed work papers that are ready to go and they can engage on and read through and say, okay, here's my test procedures. Here's my prepared by client list. I've got all this in front of me. So there's no need to go hunt down the latest spreadsheet off of a shared drive or SharePoint site somewhere. And there's no need to try and reinvent the wheel. The latest and greatest is available to them the minute that those papers come into the project. And so this is how we've tried to improve the employee experience and really drive that user adoption. I get questions about things that can be done to help with the onboarding and new hires. And I think for us, we found that not requiring manual entry for fields that can easily be pushed through, that's really, if they're doing audit findings, of course, those aren't, automatically populated. Those need granularity. But if we're just trying to associate a finding with the correct owner in the business, well, some should do that for them. There's no value in them chasing that information down from either a manager or, some documentation. within our repositories. In this next slide, I get a little bit farther into the idea of these work papers and some of the information that's available to us. So from the previous screen, I just used the example of the information control system audit. This is physical security. So here you can see some of the physical security controls that we use. The control numbers there to the left indicate, what each individual control that will be tested. But you can see that it has a description, it has our test procedures. If we were to click into this example, which is not live, unfortunately, you'd be able to see that there's other information that we include in here that can be easily referenced by any of our audit staff. Information such as informative references, which we'll check later. But a prepared by client list is also available in there. And so a staff member, once they've selected these controls, can run a simple temporary report that will pull up all the prepared by client needs for the controls that they plan to test. That's much easier and much more sustainable to do by using what's in the system, because once again, this is the latest and greatest, than them trying to find maybe a similar audit from the past and find the spreadsheet that has the magic combination of things that we need from the client. That's wasted effort and wasted time. This method gives us the ability to pull the information for them together rapidly so that they aren't incurring the overhead of trying to find what exactly is needed to furnish the client with, so that we get the right evidence to start testing. So the controls are very well documented, the test procedures, risk statements, and other data. And this is really going to help our inexperienced auditors understand the intent and the nuances of the controls specific to Huber. Being an internal audit department in a private company, we're not doing standardized SOX testing. This would lend itself very well to that as well. But for us, we have some controls that are perhaps drawn from multiple standards, and not having to walk our new auditors through that, but rather presenting the information, like I said, the latest and greatest to them is what we think will and does improve the employee experience. Step 4, promoting continuity and effectiveness. So here you can see our audit and assurance dashboard. When I log into OnSpring, this is typically what I see. Of course, there's more information below our table there, but you get the idea. So our dashboards are simple, and there's a focus on the projects. And if you can see below here, there's work papers and what status they're in. Do I have any work papers that need my review? And that's also captured in the KPI above. And we also have our report library that we populate here on this landing page. And this dashboard with our 4 KPIs at the top, we use color coding whenever possible to really drive action. So here you can see there's 2 overdue mitigations that have attention required. As well, you can see that there's some mitigation plans that need to be reviewed. So by using simple interfaces, color coding, these are self-explanatory colors. Everyone knows red is bad, green is good when talking about project status. So we aim to use the tools that we've been provided. Our staff users and executives, we restrict their ability to edit on these dashboards. We don't want to introduce any issues into any of the relationships in the system, but we also, when you start talking about making customizations to some of these reports, not all of the aspects that make these reports valid may be captured by an inexperienced user. So we keep the dashboards fairly locked up. And in the spirit of this continuity and effectiveness, you can also see that we have our open projects and we have numbered steps. And this was something that is a very simple, I guess, implementation for us, but it's really helped in people understanding this linear project flow. So if we say planning, that's the first step. If we say audit complete, follow-up report issued, that's the last step. Anything that gets into that last step, at some point, point determined by us, that information will fall off, and it'll only give us the relevant data for a certain period of time. So we're not seeing that, yeah, we completed a project 5 years ago. That's great, but that's just clutter at this point. So using the dashboard and using some timers to make sure that stale or stagnant data starts to fall off helps keep the dashboards relevant and crisp. And the idea of understanding if I'm at a audit has been closed and we're awaiting mitigation, and if an audit is closed and mitigation is complete, we have email notifications, because at those points, things need to be done. Once you're in awaiting mitigation, we have email alerts that go to the business unit contacts and to the auditors that say, there's items that need to be validated, or, something's coming due within the next 30 days. And at the audit close and mitigation complete, that means that we need to do our follow-up report, or we need to do an administrative closeout for some of our advisory engagements, which are different from our audit engagements in the sense that there's really no follow-up required for them. So, between each one of these steps, we have some gates that produce email alerts and other things to draw people's attention back to those projects. Once again, promoting that continuity and that effectiveness. We also use field reports, and not only just field reports, but I'll run like a data quality report on a project to see where folks aren't filling out information in different fields. And, we have various data quality checks within our audits already. So work papers are not accepted unless a manager goes in and does a formal review on them. Pretty standard stuff within audit, but we also do an overall quality inspection of the projects, and that keeps us kind of up and ready for any kind of QAR that we might have within our organization by an external firm. So what we'll do is I'll pull a report and I'll look and say, okay, well, let's see which fields don't have any data in them. And we found fields that were, for whatever reason, implemented with some redundant entry. And by doing that, we can tune where we're not capturing information and show us, is this a training need? Are people just skipping this? Is this a layout need that maybe it's below the fold and no one's getting down that far? Or is it really like a redundant field that people are filling out someplace else, and then there's no need to fill this form out again in another area because it's the same information? We had a risk field that was we found that actually had redundant information, and so we were able to skinny that down. And this was important to us because our previous system had a lot of redundant entry, and that was just really ineffective. And we were getting, because it was redundant entry, we were getting two answers to the same question, and that's bad for data quality within the project. And so, the ability to quickly customize our interface, and if we see something that needs to be removed or tweaked, being able to do that as a local system administrator instead of opening a help desk ticket to go off into the ether was one of our pain points. And so we really needed a system that was that flexible and that easy to work on. Not only for me as our on-spring administrator, but someday, hopefully, I'll be passing this on to my replacement. And so if I'm passing this on, I need it to be simple and straightforward for the next person that comes into that role, because I want them devoting their energy into auditing, not into doing administration. And if it's not easy to follow, if it's not well documented, then that's going to break that continuity, and then that's going to start to erode our effectiveness. So once again, you get questions. One of it is configuring for our executive role. Well, our executive role is read-only, and so that is definitely by design, but it also really is just a step out of any of our individual dashboards. So we have our audit and assurance dashboard and our business unit dashboard, and those surface near the same information, but at the audit executive level, that's a step above what those two, more tactical dashboards give, as more of a strategic overview. And it's read only because there's really no business need for our audit VP to be in and making tweaks to the projects. But anything that he needs to go in and see, he can. And so that's how we've configured it, is a more strategic view of a couple tactical dashboards, plus just some constrained rights because of business need. And that brings us to step 5, agility for specialized programs. Implementing specialized audit programs at J.M. Huber has typically been focused around our HR with European Union GDPR concerns and our intellectual property protection concerns. And when designing our programs within OnSpring, we conceptualized our core programs, so perhaps HR or cybersecurity programs, as a trunk in a tree. So we have these core programs that provide a foundation, and then the branches are our specialized programs. These specialized programs can harness a lot of the overlapping similarities that we have with our core programs. And what makes them the branch is that they've been modified to account for these special programs. And the examples I've given, the GDPR and IP concerns. This method of conceptualizing and executing our program library was especially effective for us because we get to harness the work that we've already done and then build in these modifications as needed. This is important in improving our efficiency, but this also means that our specialized programs then are available to auditors that may not be familiar with GDPR concerns or intellectual property. And they can, as mentioned before, they can bring down the latest and greatest and find audit programs that are based on audit's last update and reflect our best foot forward on these audit programs, and not having to chase a spreadsheet or go into a shared drive to make references, or a worst case scenario, make it up as they go. So these branch programs that are harnessing as much of the previously executed program as possible, they have to reflect the care for, in the GDPR case, in our limits in identifying PII, or personally identified information. And so our auditors just select that if they're going to be, I use the example of Grossenbrough, Germany, and they're going to be doing an audit that touches HR records. They would just select the specialized program. Simple as that. For us in our industrial control system auditing, which I've mentioned previously a number of times, we have different considerations for intellectual property exposure. For our engineered materials, the IP considerations are fairly low, but for our beverage and food additives, that intellectual property is what differentiates us in the marketplace. And so when selecting a project that will have some overlap in those areas, we're able to use IP specific controls layered in on top of our existing industrial control system controls. And that way, once again, we are using a test that is reflective of our most up-to-date knowledge on internal policy on intellectual property and the protection of it. This modularity helps us to include these controls where relevant. And it also increases our efficiency in scaling and creating our audit program library, because we're using work that's already been done and modifying it instead of creating our branches first and then trying to work those back into a tree. I feel as if we would have started with our specialized programs and started to work through those and not started with some core audit programs that would have been highly inefficient and would have led us to repeat a lot of work. The modularity has been a key to our efficiency, and I will include some free baseball here, or some inside baseball on something that's helped us as well. In the example that I have on the screen, we have used our controls to house all kinds of relevant information. So as I mentioned before, prepare by client lists, detailed descriptions, how to test. But I've included informative references, and in the specialized programs, these informative references could be the Huber or CP Coco information protection policy. They could also be an excerpt from our GDPR materials. But those informative references are very useful, especially to our younger auditors, our junior staff, where we get pushback during the audit on a particular control. And what I mean there is that we might have a pushback on the control or on the auditor over the validity of testing a control in a certain way. Having those informative references, in this example, I have our ICS. Informative references are mostly ISA IEC 62443, NIST 800. So those are on hand with the policy references. And what that helps the auditors do is take the pushback, not from the control, but back to the standard on which the control is based. And so that gets the conversation away from our control and into the standard. So it may be easy to argue a control with a junior staff auditor, but it's much more difficult to argue the validity of a standard that's been widely accepted across the industry, or a policy that's been implemented within Huber. Being able to quickly reference those during a discussion, during the audit, has proven invaluable for our team. The pushback is often constructive. However, it helps for our junior staff and our younger auditors to be able to have these references. And to be honest, it's come in handy to me many times. I do not have the horsepower in my brain to memorize all these different standards. So being able to call upon them has been a very, very helpful thing for us. And I thought I would include that in this example for those of you that are building out your own instances and maybe looking for some helpful fields to include that aren't included out of the box with your on-spring deployment. So that takes us to our final thoughts. And I know we've talked about a lot of things over the last 45 minutes or so, but what I'd like to share with you is to keep it simple. That building a system to scale to the complex from the simple is, I think, what we found a core belief that paid off. And so the complexity should only be taken if necessary. There should always be a premium placed on simple, straightforward interfaces, statuses. The more you layer in, the more you can get, I believe I mentioned this before, you could get different answers to the same question. One of the things that I like to use as a reference here is the movie Inception. I'm a big movie guy. And there's a part in which Ellen Page's character, Ariadne, is sitting in a French cafe with Leonardo DiCaprio's character, Cobb. And they're talking about this dream world that they're able to create. And the phrase pure creation is used, which was, in their sense, and in the sense of system design, very powerful, but must be used responsibly. And in the sense of OnSpring, we had such a restrictive audit management system that did not allow us to kind of wander down different paths of great ideas to help build in efficiency. Well, once we were given a system in which we could customize basically to our heart's content, that was very powerful, but needed to be used responsibly. And I needed to rein in the good idea fairy a number of times because we were adding complexity that we didn't actually need. And we were solving problems that we didn't actually have. So always put that premium on keeping it simple and using the power of that simplicity. And where, you know, customizations and complexities need to really be layered in on top of each other, and make sure that the payoff is there and that it can't be done in a more simple fashion. Building efficiency. So once we rolled out our system, we were using reports to find where we had redundancies, where people weren't filling in fields and trying to figure out why, both by talking with folks and by just looking at trends within the reports that we got. And what we tried to do is take what we thought was going to work in our various conversations with our business unit users and with our audit staff. And it's a great plan until people have to use it. So much like Mike Tyson once said that everyone has a plan until they get hit in the face. It's kind of the same way. You have a great layout until you start using it, and then you say, okay, this doesn't work, that doesn't work, this is redundant, this could be automated. And so, you know, we took what we had and we applied this kind of everything you need, nothing you don't mentality to it, and really tried to figure out areas where we could capitalize on automation to keep that efficiency as high as possible. And, you know, that's a really a final thought that I want to kind of stick here is that every time that you have inefficiency or redundancy or manual entry, you're adding time. And I like to use the saying that I picked up in the military when talking about travel on your 2 feet is that in the military, ounces equal pounds and pounds equal pain. So the heavier the backpack, the worse it's going to be for you. In the application, in interacting with the application, it's a similar kind of mentality that user inputs equal time and then time equals money. So all the time that your staff are filling out fields in work papers or in audit projects that are communicating data that could have been captured automatically and pushed forward through the system, you're burning money because you're burning time that could have been made more efficient through the automation. Having, you know, triggers and outcomes and the other tools within the system and using those to create that efficiency is something that has been very helpful and has paid out dividends to us and keeping our teams on task. And as I touched on in our agility for specialized programs, start with the basics, right? Layer in those special controls to save yourself time and energy. So those basic controls that you have, your core programs within your company, whether they're cybersecurity, HR, you know, the various like GAP or other audit programs that will have those carryovers into your specialized program. Start with the trunk of the tree, build to the branches. And that is especially useful in companies such as mine where there are multiple specialized areas. And being able to use work that we've already put in on our core controls and making those modifications has saved us a lot of energy. And if done in the reverse, I think would led us down the wrong path. So always think about your trunk and branches imagery, hopefully, that I've drilled in as I've talked with you today. Remember that building scale is one of the best ways to empower your teams and keep you focused on priorities. To do that, you have to spend the time and the energy up front to create these programs and efficiencies that are uniquely molded to your business team and operations. I'm giving you a lot of examples today about how Huber does things, but it's going to be up to you to figure out how your organization does things. Remember these tips as you embark on your own initiative to build for scale and create your own self-service organization. Thank you very much for your time today, and good luck in your future endeavors